Welcome back to the Teacher Let Your Light Shine podcast. I am your host, Makenzie Oliver, former public school teacher turned homeschool mom and microschool founder. Today, we have such a treat. I get to interview and have a beautiful dialogue with Mrs. Kerry McDonald. She is a senior education fellow at the Foundation for Economic Education. She is the founder and host of the Liberated Podcast. She is the author of two incredible books, Joyful Learning, which is her most recent book, and her 2019 beautiful story and just an incredible treasure for educators and homeschooling parents, Unschooled, Raising Curious, Well-Educated Children Outside of the Conventional Classroom. And in addition to all of her incredible work, Kerry has also been a part of the Education Entrepreneurship Lab. She is going to be able to explain more about how they are elevating the messages of educational entrepreneurship. I know that this dialogue today is going to be an incredible exchange of information between two passionate mothers and educators and those who are really fueling transformation in education. Hey friends, I want to take a quick moment to tell you about something that has been an absolute game changer for hundreds of microschool and homeschool hybrid founders. Our Teacher Let Your Light Shine online store, a place for founders' favorites. Inside you'll find our beloved bestsellers like the Business Bundle, packed with everything you need to launch and run your school, contracts, enrollment forms, parent partnership letters, and marketing materials that save you hours of stress. Teachers and parents just like you are saying these tools gave them clarity, confidence, and a clear path forward when starting their schools. Whether you're brand new or you're ready to grow, our resources are designed to help you skip the overwhelm and focus on what really matters most, like our open house playbook, our financial review preparation sheet, templates for Facebook and email marketing, how to create the perfect planning day guide, finding curriculum clarity workbook, our new course, Microschool Marketing Blueprint, all the information for legal clarity for beginners, and, of course, the yearly membership to Microschool Masterminds. Head over to teachersletyourlightshine.com/shop. Again, teachersletyourlightshine.com/shop. Skip the overwhelm and focus on what matters most, your students, your mission, and your vision. teachersletyourlightshine.com/shop. Go there today and grab tools that will help you shine. Kerry, welcome to the show.
Makenzie, it is so great to be here, and especially to have this as a crossover episode with Teacher Let Your Light Shine and the Liberated Podcast. I am such a huge fan of yours. Thrilled to have you on the podcast previously, and now really excited to be having this conversation with you as well.
Likewise, and I've enjoyed the time that we've been able to see each other at conferences. We both are kind of buzzing around, but I know that every time I exchange even just a simple word with you, it's always blessed me so much, Kerry. So I am just really at a loss for words for all of the incredible research and the writing that you have put forth into the world to really spread an incredible message about one of the most important topics in our world, which is education. I would love to start with your personal story. You do such amazing work bringing people onto the podcast and through your writings on so many platforms, being able to elevate the message of educators. I want to start with you today. And what originally sparked your passion for education freedom and joyful learning?
Yeah, it's such a great question, Makenzie, and I'll ask you to share the same after I respond. But, for me, it starts back in the late 1990s when I was an undergraduate in college studying economics. I fell in love with economics and the concept of free markets and choice and abundance, and was wondering, why it is that we have so much choice, variety, and abundance in so many segments of our lives. But in K-12 education, choice choices are often very limited. And of course, even more limited back in the late 1990s. And so that got me interested in researching more about education and sort of what choices did exist for families. That was when I met my first homeschooling family, and I just fell in love with homeschooling. I was completely captivated by this sort of authentic learning tied to one's community and the people, places, and things around them. I went to K-12 public schools in suburban Boston. I never knew a homeschooler. Homeschooling had just become legally recognized in all 50 states by the early to mid 1990s, so wasn't nearly as mainstream as it is today. But I was really hooked on homeschooling, and that led me to graduate school in education policy at Harvard, where I continued to be interested not only in school choice policies and what was available to families, but also alternatives to school, things like homeschooling and unschooling and different ways of approaching teaching and learning beyond a conventional classroom. So I began writing a lot about these topics, ended up choosing homeschooling for our family. Kind of fast forward a few years after graduate school, when I became a mom, we decided to homeschool our kids and kind of give them that authentic immersion in their community. And then I just sort of started to document what that looked like in our family. My 2019 book, Unschooled, that you mentioned, really talks about our family's journey to homeschooling and self-directed education, as well as the nascent microschooling movement during the 2000s and the 2010s that, of course, has just skyrocketed over the past 5 years, particularly in the wake of the pandemic disruption in education that kind of unleashed a lot of education innovation and entrepreneurship. And that's really the focus of my newest book, Joyful Learning, is, highlighting 50 plus founders, many of whom have created their new schools and spaces over the past 5 years. But now what about you, Makenzie? Because you are, just such a powerhouse in this microschooling world and are doing so much with Teacher Let Your Light Shine to galvanize new founders. And of course, you walk the talk. You are a founder and a former teacher. So maybe it would be great if you could share a little bit about your background, how you came to this work.
Sure. Just like you, grew up in kindergarten through 12th grade in public school. And I like to start off by saying that there are jobs that people report to. They go to 9 to 5, 8 to 5, and they come home and they've switched their brain off. And to them, that is fulfillment. And then there are people who have careers and they are very passionate about what they do and they are committed to excellence. And then there are people who have callings, which is so far higher than what we could even imagine going to a place of work from a set amount of hours. You really have this intuitive feeling about something that you're uniquely gifted and created to do. And there's kind of this energy and excitement and a never-ending rest for creativity. And even though I was a little girl and knew that I had wanted to be a teacher, there were a couple of times where I got distracted about maybe what I really wanted to do whenever I graduated high school. Become a psychologist, become a pharmacist, but I was always led back to what really sparked my learning and what really sparked me as a person. When I started teaching, I was so invested. And then I had my first daughter, and I would walk into the classroom and I specifically had an index card sitting on my desk. And I would say, teach these children the way you would want someone to teach Jalen, which was my daughter. And I kept that at the forefront every day. And I thought, if my daughter was in this classroom, I would want to have this classroom outside of these four walls. I would want it to feel like such an incredible community and culture. I would take the pressure off of what learning had to look like or the end goal that I felt we were really pushing in the system. And that aching never went away. And so my husband and I, about 10 years after our daughter was born, we really got into brainstorming and thinking about all of the incredible ways that we could, well, as you know, most people don't start schools in their home unless it's a preschool. So I thought the only way that we're going to get outside of this confined movement of learning is to do something so different, grassroots, so to speak. But I really thought that the only legal opportunity would be to start a preschool from my backyard. But I thought as my girls grew up, that seems a little bit out of alignment for where I am in my motherhood. Fast forward into COVID. And from that moment, I thought, I'd really love to homeschool because during COVID, we were homeschooling and we had out the sewing machine. We had out all the art supplies. We got the pianos. We were learning under the tree. We were going on field trips. And I thought, this is really what I wanted from the very get-go. And even though my daughters are grown up, I wonder if there are other families who really long for this as well. So we started very, very quickly. I announced that I would start homeschooling other children in June of 2020. And by August of 2020, we had neighborhood kids and people that I had just met through connections. They started pulling their children from public school and private school and sending them to our house. And truth be told, I thought, we'll do this for a year. We'll see how it goes because I don't really know what we're doing. This is homeschooling. It's not private school. And this was before educational savings accounts. So we ended up 3 years in our house, 18 students, Monday through Friday. And at that point, when Florida had opened up educational savings accounts, it really catapulted the need and the desire in our community. And here we are in a church. We have huge desires and plans of having 7 acres of land with tiny houses on the land for all of the little students. And we've given this vision over to families and they are 100% invested into it. And they're like, it's almost as if we are building our own village. And I believe that that is truly where joyful learning comes from. So thank you so much for asking, Kerry.
And it's Lighthouse Learning Microschool in Florida.
Yes.
That you're running. And I just think it's such a great story and also speaks to the innovation that came out of such a difficult time with school closures and remote learning that so many educators like you and parents across the country decided to take matters in their own hands and say, we have to, find a way to create these small co-learning communities so that our kids can, continue to get their academics and get some, social experiences despite school closures. And now it's really a movement that we're part of. So at what point, Makenzie, did you realize that you wanted to help others to start their own schools and spaces in their communities and begin Teacher Let Your Light Shine podcast?
Well, I definitely, after the first year, thought, okay, this is working. And I truly do feel as if I'm living my best life. And I know that there are so many teachers who would thrive being able to have this opportunity.
Yeah.
And many of my teacher friends, they said, Makenzie, I remember all of the times you would say, what if we started our own school? Or if we had our own school? Or if we could learn this way? And I would said, oh my goodness, thank you so much for sharing that because I did not really realize that I was already speaking it into existence long before I ever left. You'd go get your mail out of your teacher mailbox and you'd be like, wow, wouldn't it be awesome if we could take our kids to the library today, like the actual library, and they got a library card and the teachers would be like, yeah, that would be so great. Probably never going to happen. And so it really was also, in addition to a moment of where I felt like I was living my best life as a teacher and getting to be with my own children, I also felt a sense of loneliness. And I think a part of what you were speaking about with joyful learning is it's done in collaboration with others. We can, even Professor Duckworth, Dr. Duckworth, and she talks about grit and resilience. She speaks so clearly about the importance of doing hard things in community with other people. And so I really thought that the next step would be to share my story with others and spread the message for burnt out teachers, teachers who were trying to leave the system and just said, I think I will go and work at Target. Really, there were so many teachers said, I think I would just live a great life going and checking in at Target at this point because I am spent and I really want something different. But instead of leaving education altogether, could it look differently? And could we have the autonomy to create it based on our gifts and talents and based on what our community needed? And so that is how Teacher Let Your Light Shine was birthed. And then so many people started coming and listening. And then it just grew into another beautiful movement. And now we have micro school masterminds, and we meet weekly, if not monthly, if not weekly, to share our joys and to share expertise and to share so many wins and just strategies. Because many of us, and I know that you understand so well, we are very equipped as teachers, but when it comes to the entrepreneurship, we need more help and guidance, and we're all learning this together. And I think it's really beautiful to do it in collaboration with others.
Yeah, and you have a large, vibrant Facebook community as well, Makenzie, that brings current and former teachers together, prospective micro school founders, to share their dreams and their challenges. It's such important work. And as you were talking, it made me think that I imagine over, decades, there's been teachers working in conventional classrooms who've felt that tug toward doing something different. Like they said, I love teaching, I love education, but maybe I'm feeling stifled in this conventional classroom. And maybe they were dreaming of opening their own school, but never could imagine it as a real possibility. And that's where I think the difference now is that there are people like you providing that hope and that inspiration and that blueprint, that community to make it more possible. And that's what's so exciting. That's why I really feel like we're just at the very beginning of this movement. And really a movement, as you mentioned too, Makenzie, of keeping teachers, talented, gifted teachers, in the classroom doing the work that they were meant to do, their calling, as you put it, rather than having them check out of education altogether. It's such a wonderful gift to be able to keep these talented educators working with young people.
Thank you for sharing that, Kerry. I want to mention many people who would ask this question as I was transitioning out of public school teaching, which, by the way, I had an amazing career. I'm so grateful for all that I ever learned. And I'm also grateful for the ability to unlearn some things that I was taught through just the industrial revolution of where education was first created. I believe that one huge component that we are going to need in colleges, universities all over the world, we are going to need more education for teachers, for those who are wanting to become educators. We are going to need to revamp how we are creating education degrees for teachers so that they understand the new model of learning. We're doing it right now on the ground. We are grassroots creating these incredible alternative forms of education. We need education ourselves. And I believe that not only we're in this movement for our children, kindergarten through 12th grade, we also need to project the future of what education is going to look like for those who are entering into becoming a teacher. What skills and what strategies, what entrepreneurship skills can we also teach teachers as they are getting their degree in education? What are your thoughts on that, Kerry?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think that a lot of that education at the moment is coming through programs like yours, communities like yours, podcasts, where those grassroots efforts are making such a big difference. I think what we'll probably start to see within higher education and teachers' colleges is that as this movement grows, as more microschools spread, as more educators become school founders, then the ed schools will realize that this is a pathway, that they're not just training teachers for kind of a standardized one-size-fits-all classroom, but that there are these different models. So I think, we're probably closer and closer to a tipping point in which that happens. And then I think we'll start to see change. But we don't need to wait around for that, because I think
Sure.
the real powerful education comes from Teachers Let Your Light Shine and programs that empower entrepreneurial parents and teachers to build their own programs.
Yes. Let's talk right now about this incredible journey that you've gone through with your own education. Did you know that you wanted to be a writer?
Well, I've always loved writing. It's interesting. I wrote my first book back in 2005, so it's always been sort of part of my passion, my calling. And then as I was homeschooling my children and still very interested in education policy, I was writing a mommy blog back when mommy blogs were big in
Mhm.
kind of the 2000s and early 2010s. And then that evolved into my dedicated column at Forbes.com and later the 74. So writing about these issues has always been kind of part of my personal and professional journey, and then sort of incorporating those pieces and what I've learned from, interviewing these founders into my Unschooled book in 2019 and now Joyful Learning. It's just been such a joy for me personally to share everyone's stories.
You studied at Harvard, which is the heart of traditional academia. Other than meeting that homeschooling family, and of course, you started learning about economics and abundance, which I think is so fascinating. What else opened your eyes to learning outside of the system?
Yeah, so I went to graduate school at Harvard, and at the time, this was in the early 2000s, 2000, 2001, if you were interested in anything to do with school choice policies, really charter schools were the kind of the only place for you. Charter schools were just kind of coming on the scene. First charter school legislation began in the early 1990s, so they were really starting to gain their foothold in the 2000s. I was able to connect with the Pioneer Institute for Public Policy in Boston, which is free market think tank that was really helping to incubate charter schools and help to encourage aspiring founders to apply to become charter school administrators at the time. So that was kind of my early glimpse into school choice policies. And I kept thinking, charter schools are great. They kind of began with this mission to be incubators of experimentation and innovation. And I think many of them succeeded at that. But I kept wondering, is there something else beyond charter schools, which, often look very much like a conventional classroom, although they do have a little bit more autonomy and independence. And so that when I, was really able to start writing more about homeschooling and microschooling and self-directed learning centers for homeschoolers, all the different ways in which parents were organically connecting with one another to make learning work in their communities, that's what really inspired me. And then that's what I've spent most of the last 20 years doing.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that work. In your book, Joyful Learning, it is such a breath of fresh air. The idea that joy, oh, this is so good. This is so good, Kerry. That joy is not a luxury.
Yeah.
It is a natural state of learning. What does joyful learning mean to you? And what do you think gets in the way of it in traditional schools?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you're right that I think we need to expect joy in education. I think parents need to expect joy. I think students need to expect joy. And I think teachers need to expect joy. And that was really my motivation in writing Joyful Learning, was to show families and founders what's possible, what education entrepreneurs like you are building these incredibly joyful learning spaces where kids are so excited to go to school. They are excited to be in their learning communities, including students who may have previously hated school.
I know.
Maybe it was not a nurturing place for them. It was not a positive place. And all of a sudden now they're begging to go to school when they're sick and are sad when snow days come. I'm
I
here in New
know.
England. So that we were all, I was always excited about snow days, even though I would
Me
have told you I
too.
liked school, right? But now you have kids who are, really upset that they can't go when school's shut down. And that is possible. I think that's the message that I really try to send. And I know you try to send as well, Makenzie, that this is not, some imaginary idea. This is happening. There are
It is.
these schools and spaces where joyful learning is possible and where it is expected, and parents and families need to embrace that and look for that. And if they can't find it, build it themselves, which is really
Right.
the primary message. And so I think what's really been interesting for me and what I try to spotlight in joyful learning is the different ways in which founders create these joyful spaces. So joyful learning is filled with a whole sort of diverse assortment of learning communities, from, secular programs to faith-based, from progressive microschools to more
Yes.
conservative microschools, from classical microschools to Montessori or unschooling models, a whole variety of models and methods. But that common thread among all of these different schools and spaces is joy.
Yes. So I want to share with you 3 ways that this book personally inspired me. Before I had even started the micro school, I had created a vision board, a vision board about a joy-filled life, joy-filled teaching, joy-filled motherhood. So I was really feeling this desire for so much more joy in my life. When I read your book, there were 3 things that transpired. Number 1, because we are noticing more teachers looking for alternatives to traditional teaching, we see an influx of educators applying specifically for positions at Lighthouse Learning.
Yeah.
When they come to Lighthouse Learning, they say, wow, this is everything that I've ever wanted. But I can't let go of other things that I've learned that I know that I need to. And I remember as a teacher, having just left the classroom, being in our living room, the last thing you want to do is replicate where you came from, but it's in our nature. And I really felt as if after I read your book, this needs to be in the hands of all of the staff at Lighthouse Learning. It needs to be in the hands of everyone who is creating a new learning environment. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Yeah, I
Yes.
think it's just thinking about education differently. And I think you make a good point, Makenzie, in bringing on teachers, bringing on educators into these spaces, helping them to see teaching and learning differently. So, yeah,
Thank you.
appreciate that.
The second way that your book inspired me was for Lighthouse Learning, we've had 5 pillars of education that we were going to make education fun, flexible, because we give homeschool hybrid options. Parents can choose 5, 4, 3, 2, or 1 days. That we are family-centered, faith-based, and future-focused. And we still use those pillars. We talk about those values on a weekly basis at our school. But I wanted to narrow it down even more because we want to give academic excellence. And so many public and private schools can say that they have academic excellence. But I also felt like there was a missing piece to that as well. Like, we're not just academic excellence. And what makes it academic excellence is that I love the term that you use, self-directed learning. It is an incredible way for children to learn, self-paced learning, self-directed learning. So that encompasses academic excellence, but I wanted to include enjoyable academic excellence, because you can have the highest standards, the highest goals, but if it's not enjoyable, it's not as effective. And I really felt like you hit the nail on the head in joyful learning with this.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sometimes asked about that. How do you have joy and academic rigor? Aren't they opposites? You can't have one without the other. And I say, no, that's totally false. That joyful learning and academic rigor are not opposites. They're inseparable. They go hand in hand.
Yes.
That when students are excited to be in their learning environment, when they're engaged with the material, the learning is deep and enduring, right? It's not just remember it for a test and then forget it. It is long lasting. And that's because of these incredible learning environments that founders like you are creating and that you're inspiring others to create.
Thank you. And then the third way that your book inspired me, there were so many ways, but the third way was, I thought, now we need to create the sequel. Joyful teaching.
Yes.
There's joyful learning. Now we need joyful teaching. So we'll be expecting that in the 2028.
Please, I think you should be the one to write that, for sure.
I think that is, you inspired that so well. So thank you, Kerry. And I hope that everyone, we will link it in the show notes where they can get their copy. But thank you for pouring your heart out into the pages for this. And I do want to ask a fun question. When you write, are you paper to pen? Or pen to paper? Are you a Google Docs girl?
No, I'm a Microsoft Word girl.
Oh,
more than Google Docs. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And do you prefer coffee or tea or water? What's your favorite drink when you're writing?
Coffee with cream only is my preferred beverage. Yes.
Oh.
What about you, Makenzie?
Oh, goodness. I definitely am a coffee girl, but I'm also into bubbly drinks. So I love kombucha. And I don't know about you, but I have to have a little snack.
Mm-hmm.
Just something a little sweet, something a little crunchy always helps me to stay on task here.
Yeah.
Kerry, with the microschool movement and education entrepreneurship, many of our listeners are teachers, of course, who feel called to do something different. Maybe they're like, okay, that all sounds really glamorous. It's really so incredible, but I don't know how. I'm super scared. I don't know all the logistics, but it'd be really incredible to start our own micro school. But they're also very afraid to take the leap. To all my teacher friends, parents, and visionary leaders, if you are listening to this, I know you are passionate about creating a micro school or a program, a homeschool hybrid that truly shines. But let's be totally honest. Building and growing a micro school or your own program or homeschool hybrid, it isn't easy. It's not for the faint of heart. Whether you're just getting started or looking to scale, there's so much to navigate. Legalities, marketing, finances, student enrollment, location, curriculum planning. That's exactly why I created Microschool Masterminds, a community where you don't have to figure it out all alone. Inside, you'll get step-by-step guidance to launch, grow, and sustain your microschool or homeschool hybrid, access to our exclusive training modules, resources, and live coaching, and a supportive network of educators who get it because they're building their own dream schools as well. You have this dream of creating an incredible opportunity for students, for teachers, and yourself. Maybe you're in the early stages, wondering, where do I even start? Or maybe you've already taken the leap, but now you're feeling overwhelmed with marketing, enrollment, all of the planning or the finances. You're not alone, and you don't have to figure it out all by yourself. That's why Microschool Masterminds is here to help you on a month-by-month basis. That's right, it's a month-by-month membership designed to give you the support, structure, and strategy you need to actually make progress. Each month, you'll get live group coaching calls so you can ask questions, get feedback, and gain clarity on your next steps. Step-by-step training modules on legal setup, marketing, enrollment, financial planning, school operations, a private community of passionate educators who get what you're building and are right there with you, a roadmap to keep you moving forward whether you're launching or growing your school, and new resources delivered to your teacher mailbox inside our Microschool Masterminds community that are brand new every single month. And again, the best part is it's a month-to-month membership, so you can join when you're ready and stay as long as you need. Or if you're all in, grab the yearly membership and get 2 months free. This is your time. Your vision deserves a real plan, and I want to help you every step of the way. Go to teachersletyourlightshine.com/masterminds to join us today. That's teachersletyourlightshine.com/masterminds. We can't wait to see you. You have interviewed countless founders on the Liberated Podcast. What common themes or traits do you see in people who successfully make that transition?
Well, I would say first that they connect with communities like yours. They listen to podcasts like Teacher Let Your Light Shine. I think that's why we're seeing so many more founders get started in their new schools and spaces, because of these positive network effects, because that is this sort of growing community. And I think that I hear many of the frustrations that you hear from teachers who say, I love teaching, I love education, but I'm feeling stifled in a conventional classroom. Can I do something else? And then they realize that there are people just like them who've gone before, who've done it, who've been successful, and who are finding incredible fulfillment personally and professionally in education entrepreneurship. As you mentioned before, often these are teachers who never expected to be small business owners. They have the pedagogical part down pat, but when it comes to accounting and bookkeeping and taxes and all of that stuff, it can be a little bit overwhelming. And I think that that's the challenge for them. And again, there's so many more resources available to help them on that path as well, and kind of managing the day-to-day operations of running a small school.
For sure. I also believe that hope is so powerful, and there can also be some discouragement along the way. And there's research to back up what helps us to stay hopeful. And one of the ways to stay hopeful is that we have someone alongside of us who is coaching us, giving us really great feedback, who is speaking life into us. That's very important. But even more so than hearing your podcast, my podcast, reading books about it, the highest conversion for people to stick with it and to get out of a state of discouragement and into a state of being hopeful is that they are in community with others. They are in community with others. I would like to know, what encouragement would you offer to a teacher today who says, I feel called to do this, but I am scared?
Yeah, I would say first, to your point, you're not alone. You are part of a much bigger movement. In fact, just the other day, I had a conversation with someone who was looking to create a new microschool, and they had no idea at this whole world that you and I know is so dynamic and so inspiring. And I think once prospective founders realize that this community is so big and so generous with time, with resources, with insights, then they realize that this is possible, that they are able to move from idea to launch much more quickly and successfully than they ever imagined.
Yes. And thank you for bringing that to the forefront. Generosity. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for being so generous. When we were at the Vela conference, we had copies of your book, and I think you allowing that opportunity to get it in the hands of others you created the least resistance to just getting on Amazon or getting on your phone and ordering the book. It was right there. It was so helpful to just walk away and begin reading it on the plane. So thank you for your generosity and all that you do. I also know that you are deeply involved in education policy and advocacy. And for those of us who are building on the ground, what changes are happening at the state or the national level that we should be paying attention to?
Yeah, again, such an exciting time in U.S. education. And I think a lot of that is due to the expansion of school choice policies across the country. We now have 35 states plus DC and Puerto Rico that have some version of private school choice, meaning that families are able to access a portion of education funding to use at a school or learning environment that is right for them. And now in 17 states, those policies are universal in terms of eligibility for all K-12 students. So that now we have more than half of American students eligible for a private school choice program. And in many states, these programs apply to microschools and hybrid homeschool programs and other innovative learning settings. And so I think that's exciting. It makes these models much more financially accessible to more families and makes this entrepreneurial pathway more financially sustainable for founders. But I also think it's important to note that this movement towards innovative education models is occurring all across the U.S., including in states like mine. I'm in Massachusetts that has no private school choice programs and none on the horizon. So it's certainly accelerating in states like yours, Makenzie, and Florida that has long had generous school choice programs that have recently become universal. But it is really happening everywhere. Founders are discovering that they can create these wonderful schools that families increasingly want and do so in creative ways.
You have been an incredible pioneer for this as well. Could you give us more information about the Education Entrepreneurship Lab?
Yeah, so as you mentioned in my introduction, Makenzie, I'm a senior fellow at the Foundation for Economic Education, one of the country's oldest free market think tanks. Was founded in 1946, and I lead the Education Entrepreneurship Lab at FEE. And that website is edentrepreneur.org. And really the vision for edentrepreneur.org was to create an entrepreneur.com for education entrepreneurs.
Yes.
So if your listeners are familiar with entrepreneur.com, it's brimming with helpful how-to articles for entrepreneurs in all sectors, often written by entrepreneurs themselves, really advice-laden pieces. And I wanted to do that same thing for education entrepreneurs. And so at edentrepreneur.org, founders are able to see articles written by other founders, right? Other school founders and education entrepreneurs about their startup experiences, some of their challenges. We have 2 entrepreneurs in residence, Kim Kent and Jenny Jones, at the Education Entrepreneurship Lab at FEE, who write weekly articles for us about their experiences. And we're always looking for more writers. So if anyone in your audience is eager to write down their thoughts, I've heard some of the writers that we've had on the site say that they find it to be very therapeutic, especially if they're dealing with fire marshals and insurance companies and all kinds of things. That can be helpful sometimes to get down those frustrations on paper and leave with sort of a hopeful message and advice for others. So, yeah, definitely encourage any of your listeners to reach out and write for us.
Oh my goodness. Such a pleasure. And I understand that therapeutic component of being able to write out the frustrations. And I know for myself, it's very important to also write out all of the victories, because the victories are really help us to stay in this incredible movement when you may feel as if the forces are coming upon you in opposition. But I do believe that you just spoke of so much hope. Thank you so much for sharing all of the statistics. So much hope that's on the horizon for supporting education, for supporting these movements. I would love for you to share, what are some other books that you would recommend in addition to Unschooled and Joyful Learning? What books would you recommend for either homeschooling parents or teachers who are starting microschools or alternative education models?
Well, one of my favorite books is Free to Learn by Dr. Peter Gray. He's Boston College psychology professor. He was really a beacon for me in my early days of homeschooling and unschooling my kids, and sort of discovering the benefits of self-directed education, of allowing young people to have autonomy over their learning and tie education to a child's interests and passions and gifts. So highly recommend Peter Gray's book, Free to Learn. He also has a Substack related to those themes. So that would be my top choice. What about you, Makenzie? What would you say?
I believe I absolutely loved the work of students and teachers who were sharing. One of the books that really helped to catapult and just get me out into a different mindset was Teach Like Finland. And it really helped me to see what other cultures and other countries were doing and how they were implementing something different to become successful. I also believe that if there is a specific area that education entrepreneurs are struggling with, whether it be mindset, whether it be financials, that they do a dive into that component that helps them to get unstuck. So I am a fan of any work that has to do with productivity, that has to do with mindset shifts, that has to do with strategic planning, because when you're planning your lessons in the classroom, that's one level of planning. But when you are planning so many things for writing grants, when you're doing strategic planning for a business plan, for a business model, for any type of curriculum search, I believe that it is just really critical that you're taking the time to educate yourself. I actually have on my website, teacherletyourlightshine.com/blog, there's a whole list of books that I recommend for educational entrepreneurship. I really want to make sure that we focus in a little bit on the self-directed learning, Kerry. This is massive. I don't know about you, but I was very unaware of really what self-directed learning was and what it could ever be. How did you get the courage to begin that self-directed learning when you were homeschooling your own children and you're thinking, are they up to the standard that they need to be in? Where are the benchmarks? How do I know that they're learning? How do I know that they're learning what they're supposed to be learning? How did you kind of shed some of the mindset pieces that were potentially holding you back?
Yeah. So when we first started homeschooling our oldest of our 4 children, Molly, when she was young, kind of preschool age, we were just, again, immersed in our community, doing all kinds of things, visiting libraries and museums and cultural sites and learning through everyday living. And then as she approached kindergarten age, I said, okay, now I have to get serious about curriculum and figuring out, a much more structured learning plan for her. And so as I was narrowing down various curriculum options, and many of them are not cheap. This was before a lot of programs became more, free or low cost. I was, sort of thinking about this investment in a kindergarten curriculum for her that would teach her reading, writing, and arithmetic in a fun way, for sure, but still very, very structured. And as I was doing that, I noticed that she taught herself how to read. And I said, okay, I'm about to spend money on this curriculum. It's going to teach her something that she's already taught herself. And she very quickly became a proficient reader. And then I started to notice all these other things that she was learning, just these amazing skills and talents that she was developing without a structured curriculum. So that was what led me to wonder, and I think I even Googled at the time, is there such a thing as non-curriculum based homeschooling?
Wow.
And then I discovered this whole idea of unschooling and self-directed education, which doesn't, to be clear, doesn't necessarily mean not using curriculum. It just means that the curriculum is sort of self-chosen and self-directed. And so all of my kids have learned that way. My oldest daughter, Molly, who I was just describing, she ended up deciding in high school that she wanted to, have more of a standardized curriculum. And so she continued to be a homeschooler, but had a full kind of high school suite of classes and began to take dual enrollment classes at local community colleges that were incredibly rigorous and very structured. But she was choosing that process. And now she's a freshman in college. So self-directed education is one educational philosophy. It's certainly the one that we choose for our family, and it's the one that I document in my 2019 book, Unschooled. But for joyful learning, I really look at all kinds of different educational models and methods, not just unschooling, but all kinds, because I think that that's where this movement is, that it's individual founders creating their vision for learning in many ways, very learner driven and learner focused, but not often or not always as kind of unschooly as, some of the pathways that I've chosen for my family. And I think that that's exciting that now founders like you are really able to kind of pick and choose different educational philosophies and approaches and still find that same joy and that same the sense of personal agency in today's learners.
Yes. I believe you really helped to clarify where some of us get a little confused when it comes to how are we going to do this? How do I teach multi-age? What curriculum am I going to choose? And I believe that what you just said is so imperative for everyone to understand. Philosophy, like thinking about
Mm-hmm.
the educational philosophy, is so paramount. It is foundational before you ever choose what curriculum. Very rarely will I hear a founder say the philosophy that we have been creating our whole model from is this. You'll pretty much hear founders talk about the curriculum or the curriculum struggles. And I wonder if it's because we struggle with embracing a philosophy that really works for us and for our students and for those who we serve before we ever start choosing curriculum.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good point, is really thinking about what is your educational vision as a founder? What is the kind of learning environment that you want to create? Is it a classical school? Is it a Montessori-inspired program? I think one of the common threads that I see in the founders that I interview in today's, new school founders is that they're still always really focused on putting the learner first and tailoring education to the individual needs of each learner. I think that's what's so special about the microschooling movement and innovative education more generally today, is that we're kind of moving away from one size fits all education, from thinking about, a group of fourth graders, and instead saying, well, what does this 10-year-old in front of me need? And what is the best curriculum approach for that child that fits into as a founder, my larger educational vision?
And I want to share with the listeners that you have the freedom, you have the opportunity at hand to really spend time thinking about this. And if you are interested as a listener to continue this conversation because you want more clarity, you need more courage, you need more confidence to think about your philosophy, to dream the dream, then please, we invite you to have a conversation with Kerry, have a conversation with me. You can find us through email. I will definitely have Kerry's information linked in the podcast. And definitely begin communicating and collaborating with other founders, because there is not just one way. There are so many beautiful ways that we can inspire and educate children. Kerry, to end this incredible podcast, would you share with us how you would describe the future of education?
Joyful.
Yes!
I mean, again, I think that we are shifting from this notion that schooling and education should be unpleasant to recognizing that it should be joyful, that it should be joyful for everybody involved, for parents, for teachers, for students, for founders. And that is possible. It is happening. It is real. And it's thanks to founders like you, Makenzie, not only for the work that you're doing in your learning community, but that you're inspiring so many others across the country to do. And I strongly encourage my listeners and viewers frequently to tune into your podcast, Teacher Let Your Light Shine, and visit your Facebook community and your website. Could you share again for us, Makenzie, your website?
Yes, it is teachersletyourlightshine.com. And there you can find information through our blog, so many incredible resources. There are videos, there are courses, there is our microschool masterminds that we would love for you to come and be a part of, to collaborate. And Kerry, you as well. Please share the easiest and the greatest way that people can continue to connect and learn from you.
Sure. Well, you can get Joyful Learning, How to Find Freedom, Happiness, and Success Beyond Conventional Schooling wherever books are sold. You can also visit the Education Entrepreneurship Lab at edentrepreneur.org. There you'll also find links to the book and opportunities to come write for us. Please share your story there. And Makenzie, we could just wrap up with you sharing, what do you think the future of education looks like?
I believe that it's fearless.
Love it.
Yeah, I just think we are going to break down the barriers of fear and opposition and the status quo of what education has ever been. We're going to see so many people stepping out with pioneering ideas, with joy, with a spirit of celebration, and a desire for intentionality. And so, in order to do that, yes, you may feel scared at times. You may feel the fear, but it will ultimately be fearlessness that allows you to take that step. And I'm very grateful for all of the fierce founders out there that are stepping into the unknown and embracing what is really going to be the future of education.
Joyful and fearless. I completely agree. This is the
Yes.
future and it is bright.
Yes. Kerry, thank you for sharing your heart, your wisdom, and your vision with us. Your work truly does continue to inspire educators and inspire parents, and it creates these incredible, wonderful places for children to learn where they truly can thrive. And I'm excited to continue to collaborate with you. Thank you, Kerry, so much for being on the show. Friends, if you love this conversation, please make sure to check out Kerry's Joyful Learning and the Liberated Ed podcast. And remember that you have the permission to build something beautiful, joyful, and free. So until next time, keep shining your light. Thank you, Kerry.
Thanks, Makenzie. This was so great.